So everyone, welcome to the first meeting for 2022 for the Agile Austin Coaching Meetup. So I'm trying to make my screen go. So for Agile Austin, our mission is to connect people and to foster professional growth through collaborative events that educate our community on uncovering better ways to deliver value through Agile values, principles, and practices. And we'll keep going through these slides. We do have sponsorship as well as membership opportunities. And if you're curious about that, we've got those up on our website. And we'd be happy to talk to you about any of those opportunities that we have. These are the 2021 and 22 board members. There's Max Akezi, who is our fearless president, Steve Martin, and yes, that is his real name, as he likes to say. Carrie Sudi, product officer. Leland does the learning aspect of it. Adam is technology, and Larry, your old friend Scott Killen, is still the treasurer for Agile Austin. So if you ever have any questions about Agile Austin and what we do, these are some great people for you to connect with as well. These are all of the different meetups that Agile Austin currently has. You're at the coaching meetup right now, but we also have an Agile at Scale meetup, a book club, an Agile Leaders SIG, Lean and Kanban SIG, and a Scrum Master SIG as well. We also have the big monthly speaker series, which is where Agile Austin tries to bring in bigger, more global known individuals to go ahead and talk to us at that one. And that is the second Tuesday of each month. All right, so if you are interested in volunteering with Agile Austin, we are in dire need of help around social media support, co-hosting or leading a monthly special interest group, i.e. what you're seeing right here. But if you also have other ideas, those are welcome, and bring them forth to that Agile Austin board. Okay, but tonight, I'm going to enable live transcription. Hold on, there we go. This is the actual coaching SIG. And first and foremost, I would like to thank Brittany Durden. Brittany and I have hosted this meetup together for about 4 years now, and she's recently rolled off because she's got lots going on down at USHIP, and she wasn't able to devote all the time she wanted to this SIG. But I want to thank her because number one, she saved me all those years ago when we were first trying to get this off the ground, and her company USHIP, back when in those halcyon days when we met in person, they hosted this meetup selflessly and regularly and had this great space downtown. So I wanted to thank her first and foremost. But I am Erin, and co-host is Sid Markle. And Sid, could you raise your hand and wave at people so they know which one you are too? But together, we are the coaching SIG now, and we'll meet the first Monday of each month about 6:15 Central Time via Zoom. So I think we're probably going to keep this remote, a virtual meetup for the time being. So let's keep going. These are upcoming events. Next month, Gabby Aragon, she is the head of system development for Roche Pharmaceutical. And she's been doing a lot of work for organizational transformation, not just Agile transformation, for the Central America and Caribbean divisions down there. And the work she's doing is actually taking off and going global. She's going to come, and I'm also going to ask, if you are not me or not Renee, please put yourself on mute because we're picking up audio on someone else. But anyway, Gabby will be coming, and she is the February speaker for this. And I'm hugely excited about this because I've been a part of the transformation work she's doing, and I know the impact it is having on those systems there. And in March, our very own Sid Markle, she is going to be speaking. Sid, you want to give a quick tease about what you might be talking about there?
I'd love to. I'm going to be talking a little bit about just organizational change management and sort of an introduction to it via some stories about change programs that I've, run in the past. So looking forward to that.
And y'all, you may recognize Sid. She did some work last year with Shane Hasty and for IC Agile, and really around some of that ethics and the like. So you might remember her drawings, those great vocabulary drawings that she did. That was Sid. And I don't have anyone yet for April, so just please admire Gabby's photo there again. just in the meantime. But tonight, our speaker is Renee Ann Poulin. And I met her a few years, well, I think last year, at a meetup just like this. And she sounded interesting. And so I got to talking to her. And then I asked her, hey, might you be interested in speaking more to this group? And she said yes. So Renee Ann, 8+ year in higher education. She has a PhD, by the way, very bright woman. She's worn many hats: professor, facilitator, trainer, and coach. And she's passionate about doing this work and helping diverse cross-functional teams communicate and work together more effectively. So tonight she's going to talk to us about navigating a career change with agility. So Renee, with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn things over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Erin. It's a real pleasure to be with you. I used to live in Texas, in Waco. So I'm currently located in Kansas City, where it's a little bit colder, but really happy to see y'all and to have you join me and have the opportunity to share my story with you. So in the Zoom chat, you'll find a mural link. So I'll invite you to click on that link. I'll also be sharing my screen, but there will be a bit of interaction aside from the talk. So let's do that.
Renee, I'm going to jump in here real quick. Everyone, so whenever you have questions, feel free to load them into the chat and I'll monitor them. And at the end of Renee's talk, I'll make certain that she gets those questions and is able to answer them there, okay? So if you have questions, load them in that way and Sid and I'll watch and make certain that those get answered later, okay?
Great, thank you, Erin. All right, so I'll invite you I'll give you a minute here to add some thoughts here right on the Miro board. So there's some sticky notes. You can double click on the sticky note and just start typing and share with me and with the group what you think is the biggest challenge of a career change. So I'll give you a minute to do that. And I realize there are a lot of participants, so it's okay if the sticky notes overflow. It's an infinite board, so we can add as many as we want. Yes, we have imposter syndrome. I'll put a minute. Fear, lack of experience. Yes. Rebuilding relationships, right? Trying to meet new people. Absolutely. Change in definition of success, right? Might mean reinventing your idea of what success means. Beginning with less experience, perhaps, right? Perhaps facing a pay cut. Sure. Going from a subject matter expert to newbie, right? It's being a beginner again. New cultural norms, right? You're learning a new culture, could be a new industry. Biggest challenge, talking to recruiters without formal experience. Right, they might not understand the experience that you're bringing, especially if you're coming from a non-traditional background. Proving value early. Yes, these are all really great and real challenges that perhaps you've faced yourself or have seen loved ones going through. So I'll be addressing a lot of these in my talk today, my story. All right, so, and you can keep adding to it if you'd like. All right, so I'll do the talk, and then at the end, we'll have some time for a little more interactive activity and some questions. So you can, again, type those in the chat if you'd like, and then we'll be addressing those at the end of the talk. 10 months ago, I became an Agile coach at a software company. When I'm introduced to other professionals, many are surprised to learn that I used to work as an Italian professor. That's right, for 8 years, I worked full-time in the ivory tower. I hold a PhD in Italian literature with a minor in musicology. My dissertation, which I completed at the University of Wisconsin, one of the top programs in Italian studies, focused on the evolution of the opera libretto between the 17th and 18th century Rome. I studied original opera manuscripts in the medieval castle of Milan, in St. Mark's Square in Venice, and in the Vatican libraries. I presented my research at international conferences and published in scholarly journals. I was a successful instructor, having taught about 20 distinct university courses in 4 institutions. I developed curriculum. I co-directed a study abroad program in Tuscany. I really loved working with students and pushing the boundaries of knowledge. I checked all of the professor boxes and had my cards in order for a successful academic career. Despite my apparent success, there was one major problem with my career. There were fewer and fewer tenure-track positions in my field. As a professor, I had always worked on contract. And one fateful day, about 3 years ago, I was informed that my contract would not be renewed. That year, there were about 5 full-time positions open in my field in North America, and they were in geographic locations in which I had no desire to live. I knew I had to make a decision. Ultimately, it became clear that it was in my best interest to change careers. This news propelled me through one of the most radical transformations of my life. Since I started working as an Agile coach, a number of people have asked me, how did you do it? How did you go from drinking Starbucks cappuccinos in the university library while grading student papers to hosting lean coffee retrospectives with software engineers? People seeking to change careers or who are simply curious started asking me to share my story. And this is how this talk came about. Career transitions present a number of challenges, as you've pointed out in our opening activity. And there's no magic formula or easy solution to the difficulties that are inherent to change. What I can share with you is my personal journey with its challenges and successes, and some of the competencies and skills that I found fundamental to this shift as a sort of toolbox that may help those of you facing change at work, whether personally or in a coaching or mentoring role. My journey began with the realization that I had fallen into a trap. Perhaps you've been in a similar trap too. Perhaps you're in this trap currently. I believed in the career myth. I really believed that a career was a straight road that led to a specific destination. The career of a university professor is as linear as they get. After graduate school, I would become an assistant professor, then obtain tenure, receive promotion to associate professor, then to full professor, then retire, and perhaps continue research in a library office as an emerita until the day I died. I had it all figured out. And the predictability of it all made me feel so secure. The news of my contract renewal shook me to the core and made me realize just how volatile the workplace can be. I had no plan B. What else was I supposed to do with a PhD in Italian? In graduate school, I had been socialized to think that a professorship was the only path forward. I desperately wanted someone to tell me where to go from there. I had to start walking into the unknown. And to be honest, I didn't like it. I didn't like the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity. Reflecting on my journey from here, on the other side of the career transition, I can say that I overcame the career trap by developing aspects of personal agility. The Personal Agility Framework by Kevin Empey helped me articulate the skills and competencies I discovered along the way. And I hope it can be helpful for you and the people you mentor and coach. What is personal agility? It's agility on an individual level. It is, according to Kevin Empey's definition, quote, the capability to sense, respond, and adapt to changing circumstances, applying purpose, openness, and resilience in learning new skills, developing new solutions, and delivering positive outcomes with and through others. In my current role as team coach, I mainly work at the team level, but these teams are made up of individuals who have embraced, some more, some perhaps less so, the Agile mindset. The teams we work with are only as agile as their least agile members. The good news is that we can develop the skills and competencies of personal agility in ourselves, and we can also encourage their growth in the people we mentor and coach. I really believe that this is one of the most powerful ways of making our organizations more future-proof. The personal agility framework is comprised of 6 attributes, 3 in the personal domain and 3 in the social domain. We'll be looking at each one in the context of my transition story. And keep these, pay close attention because of the activity at the end has to do with these attributes. First one, change orientation. The first obstacle I had to overcome in my transition was to not only accept the change, but to anticipate it, to react positively to it. Looking back, I can see how I was like a frog in the proverbial boiling water. I couldn't see clearly the signs of changes happening in my field and industry. Enrollments in modern languages were consistently dropping across North America. There were fewer and fewer job postings every year. It took a major jolt, a job and career loss, for me to wake up and see that, in fact, changes were happening in my workplace. Changes were happening in workplaces everywhere. In the Future of Jobs report, we read that 40% of the skills that are viewed as essential in the workforce today will change by the year 2025. That's a lot. I know I have skills that are pretty much obsolete, skills like that are pretty much obsolete. For example, for my dissertation, I had to learn how to use a microfilm machine. So on its own, being able to use a microfilm machine won't get you very far on the job market, but thankfully I had other transferable and more marketable skills and could learn some additional ones as well. I finally started to sense the change around me and overcame my state of denial by gathering information from different reliable sources. While tenured professors close to me, and whom I deeply respect, were encouraging me to try my luck again at the academic job market, to continue publishing despite not having funding to do so in my contracted position, professional association reports were underlining the fact that the odds were really not in my favor. According to the American Association of University Professors, over 70% of all faculty positions are now off the tenure track and thus offer little job security for the most part. I also began reading stories of other academics who had quit the professoriate. There are so many of these published stories that they now form a whole genre in themselves, the academic quitlet. The Quitlet collection that I found the most helpful is Succeeding Outside the Academy, Career Paths Beyond the Humanities, Social Sciences, and STEM, edited by Joseph Ruscione and Kelly Baker. I purchased the book after attending a virtual book release party, read the entire volume in one sitting with a box of Kleenex. These former academics' candid stories resonated with me because they also had experienced the grief and heartache that comes from being let down by an institution they had sacrificed so much to enter. I finally understood that I too needed to stop investing my time and talents into a career path that led to nowhere and set sail in a new direction. Purposefulness. The next obstacle I had to tackle was that I wasn't quite sure what to pursue. I was so used to seeing myself as a subject matter expert that was the only value I could see myself bringing to an employer. And of course, it turns out I was wrong. But I had to discover a potential plan B, C, and D for myself. I had to think about and imagine a new purpose. What were my adjacent possibilities? What was one step away? What did I want to try next? Instead of thinking of my career in linear terms, I could imagine it as a mosaic. I used to conduct research in Rome, and in the historical center of Rome, the pavement is made up of little stones called Sanpietrini, and they resemble a mosaic. These Sanpietrini stones adapt to the terrain underneath. I didn't have to go in a straight line. I could go sideways or even horizontally in any direction. I could also adapt to the terrain, just like the Sanpietrini. To learn more about the different directions I could take, I joined an online community of transitioning academics called Beyond the Professoriate. This virtual community not only offered a safe place to talk about my transition in an online forum, but it also introduced me to new professions I had never heard about, like user experience research, which turns out to be a popular career option for people with a PhD. The online community is also where I learned how important it was to talk to and reach out to people in my network, especially to former academics who had forged a new path for themselves. I followed this advice and had virtual coffees with former classmates. Some of them had stayed in academia, of course, but many others had created new careers for themselves in what many might consider unusual paths. For example, one PhD owns a French bakery. One owns an Italian grocery store. Another sells pasta to restaurants. One works in corporate training. Another trains FBI agents in Paris. One became the headmaster of a private school. A group works as middle or high school teachers. Some are translators, professional indexers, or interpreters. One went back to her former career as a nurse. And finally, another went back to school to pursue a degree in family counseling. I discovered that there really were no limits to what I could imagine myself to be. The online community of transitioning academics also was crucial to helping me rediscover the values and strengths that had motivated me to pursue a PhD in the first place. I had lots of skills, but I learned that it was important to identify the ones that I loved to practice and the ones I hated. If you ask your average graduate student why they want to be a professor, they'll likely say that it's because they love to teach or that they live for research. But because you're able to do something doesn't mean you should do it. There are so many facets to teaching and researching that one might love or despise. So to designing new curriculum, I would say, great, count me in. To grading essays, no thank you. I had to identify and sift through my values and transferable skills and decide what I wanted to do more of in my new job. Self-assessment tools such as the VIA Strengths Profile and the Clifton Strengths by Gallup helped me pinpoint my strong points. My top 2 values, according to the VIA Strengths Profile, are creativity and love of learning. Thinking of novel ways to do things and mastering new skills, topics, and bodies of knowledge make me come alive. From the Clifton Strengths, the learning theme came up as a strength, pointing to a great desire to want to continuously improve. The top strength is a strategic theme, which is the talent of creating alternative ways to proceed, seeing relevant patterns and spotting issues. As it turns out, my values and strengths align and support each other quite closely. Discussing these results with my close friends, family, and online community helped me articulate the deeper purpose that had been hiding from my sight. I knew deep down that I loved to learn and that I wanted to foster growth in others in creative and innovative ways. I could explore other avenues aside from education and research to achieve this purpose. I felt excited to explore other careers. The learning mindset. I needed to make some room for growth and become a beginner again. This was challenging for someone who was used to being an expert and a specialist. I do, however, value and excel at acquiring new knowledge and skill, as those self-assessments pointed out, so I swallowed my pride and I started attending professional meetups with a notepad. One of the skills that I became very good at during the doctorate was taking notes. One of my friends, who's a self-proclaimed great networker, gave me this advice. Just look relaxed and ask lots of questions. So that's what I did. I listened, I took lots of notes. At tech meetups, I imagined that I was an ethnographer studying a new culture. How did they talk? What were their values and rituals? How did they dress? What symbols were meaningful to them? Apparently, my curiosity really stood out. At one meetup, a person asked, it was a security meetup, by the way, tech security meetup. A person asked me if I was a journalist. I assured them that I was not, in fact, a journalist, just a very curious person, and we laughed it off. Sometimes I didn't understand most of the meetup presentation because they were so technical or focused on programming. But thanks to my training in foreign languages and cultures, it felt normal to just soak it in and understand what I could, continue learning more the next day. It was through attending tech meetups in Kansas City, where I'm located currently, that I first learned about Agile coaches and Scrum Masters. I had never heard of this role before. As these coaches explained what they did, I thought to myself that it seemed to overlap quite nicely with my teaching skill set. The Agile values resonated with my personal and professional values, especially respect and openness. I was intrigued. and ultimately decided to align my job search in that direction. In the Agile space, we talk about developing T-shaped competencies. The vertical line of the T represents a depth of knowledge or specialization, and the horizontal bar to the breadth represents the breadth of skills. I knew I had to grow in breadth. As a professor, my goal had been to become more of an I-shaped professional. I understand now how becoming a generalized specialist or a specialized generalist can help teams and individuals become more cross-functional and agile. Being able to take on more roles in an organization makes a person even more valuable. So I would encourage you to think about your own shape. Are you an I? Are you a T? Or perhaps you're a comb with many deep specializations. Whatever our shape, we can certainly always learn new skills. The Agile Coaching Competency Framework helped me discover which skill gaps I needed to fill and which skills I already possessed. I saw that I was very strong in the 4 core skills of Agile coaching, which I had exercised for many years in higher education, namely teaching, mentoring, professional coaching, and facilitating. Thanks to the online learning and interactions I had with Agilists and industry experts, I strengthened some of my less developed areas, like the Agile practices and business practices. My career transition unfortunately overlapped the pandemic, and I had to quickly become even more resourceful in terms of skill development. Aside from the obvious video and reading resources one might find online, I started attending many virtual events on Meetup, some in international locations as far as New Zealand, growing my knowledge and network at the same time. I found it fascinating to see how the Agile principles and values were being applied and taught in entirely different cultural contexts, and enjoying the culturally appropriate analogies. So for example, in one meetup in Italy, we talked about how product management could be likened to making tiramisu. I learned to use new software like Jira and Miro on my own, thanks to free tutorials, and earned the PMP and Scrum Master certifications online, taking these exams virtually. I scoured LinkedIn feeds to learn more about the field, and one day after entering a LinkedIn contest on a whim, I unexpectedly won tuition for an IC Agile course on people development, offered virtually by Agile people based out of Sweden. As someone who'd never won a draw before in my life, it came as a great surprise, and one of the many signs that seemed to point out the right direction for me. It took commitment and focus to complete the certification with the live classes in a European time zone that corresponded to 3 to 5 a.m. Central Time. I drank a lot of coffee that month. Relationship management. The relationships, both old and new, were crucial to my learning journey. During the pandemic hiring freeze, I invested a lot of time and energy in relationship building. I can attest that if it weren't for these relationships, I would not be an Agile coach today. In fact, all of the job interview invitations I received came through referrals. While conducting informational interviews and learning from former academics, while connecting with and learning from former academics, I learned about the importance of conducting informational interviews. At first, this was really daunting, and I feared that people I would meet in the new industry would judge me negatively because of my ignorance of their field. But after conducting dozens of informational interviews, I came to really appreciate the value of these conversations. People love talking about their passions when asked the right questions. So before each interview, I researched the interviewees' profiles on LinkedIn, identified the conversation objective, and prepared a series of questions ahead of time. So I would not share these with the person ahead of time. I would just write them for myself to prepare. And with preparation and practice, I overcame my introverted personality and soaked in the wisdom that was being shared. In one memorable conversation, a former German linguistics professor turned content strategist told me to think about my skills like the astronauts on the Apollo 13 mission had to think of ways to use what they had on the spaceship to save themselves from certain death. He said that skills are like Lego pieces. It can be combined in a great variety of ways. The difficulty job seekers have, who have a non-traditional background, is that hiring managers and companies think of their open roles as fixed and unchanging reality. They're looking to fill a hole. They're looking for a person who will serve as a perfectly fitting jigsaw puzzle piece. And unfortunately, thinking this way could be limiting the pool of great candidates who might bring some added value that they didn't even know they needed. A company might miss on a fantastic hire who brings innovation along with a diverse set of skills and worldview. Collaboration. One of the obstacles to becoming an Agile coach without a software background is coming across an opportunity for hands-on and collaborative experience. I discovered through my intense networking efforts that there was a Slack group for developers in Kansas City. So I decided to publish a post explaining that I was looking for a pro bono project. I was quickly referred to a local nonprofit that was looking to develop an app that would help truck drivers deliver fresh produce to area food deserts. It seemed like a wonderful cause. I worked with this team of software developers and a designer on this project for several months. All were so patient in answering my questions and let me observe their working sessions. I got to practice Gemba. Another invaluable experience that I would strongly recommend for career changers is a shadowing experience. The coach with whom I work in my current role was introduced to me through a connection I made at a professional meetup. And after shadowing for a few months, it became apparent that we really enjoyed working with each other. So when the product team needed additional coaching help, I was hired to fill that need. Autonomy and empowerment. My job search from the time I left academia to beginning my current Agile coaching role took 13 months, 11 of which overlapped the pandemic. It was a difficult journey, made lighter thanks to the wisdom and encouragement of mentors who believed in me and what I had to offer. I met one of these mentors thanks to a mentorship program organized by the local PMI chapter. During the darkest months of the job search, when hiring had practically halted entirely, this mentor told me to keep looking for the company that had an enlightened mindset, a company that was open enough to hiring a candidate with a diverse, non-traditional background. After 13 months, these open-minded companies appeared seemingly out of thin air. The week I received an offer for my current role as an Agile coach, I was reaching the final interview stage for a project management role and was also offered a position as a user experience strategist, which I obviously declined. I know that these three very different roles became career options because I had developed the autonomy along my journey to play and experiment with my metaphorical Lego set of skills. I could have been a user experience strategist, a project manager, or a host of other things, but I'm really happy in my role as an Agile coach. I find myself using many of the skills that I enjoyed using in my previous role as a professor. In my 8 years of full-time work as a professor in modern languages, I learned to facilitate discussions skillfully and to create a safe and respectful environment for the sharing of opinions and ideas. I do this every time I facilitate a retro or engage in a discussion with the team regarding their workflow or group dynamics. As a professor, I read and synthesized large volumes of text, analyzed data, synthesizing it and writing appropriate for a target audience in the form of articles and lectures. I do this in my current role every time I collate resources to share with the team dealing with a specific issue, when analyzing flow metrics, and when designing training materials in our monthly Learning Dojo and Agile game session. I used to ask many questions to test learning and to incite deeper reflection. I do this in a coaching stance now to empower teams to design the right solution to the problems they're solving. I used to help students span boundaries and grow in their knowledge and ability to enter and adapt to a new culture and language in the classroom, and in Italy when I co-directed study abroad programs for American students. The Agile mindset for many is still a foreign culture in a sense. Agile coaches must address prejudices and misconceptions as we introduce the values and practices that derive from it. Boundary spanning is a very difficult skill to master, but my experience in navigating foreign cultures makes it feel natural to me, and I presume that my career journey into a new industry is a case in point. Any major career change is difficult, and it's sometimes hard to know whether you're going in the right direction or not. There's no one way to get to your next step. At the beginning of my journey, I felt trapped, lost, and confused. It took courage to embark on a voyage for which I had no map. Despite the dead ends, the speed bumps, the steep hills, the detours, and the loops, I landed in a role that I authentically enjoy. Frequently, people ask me if I miss working as a professor, and I can say in all honesty that I don't. I teach, mentor, facilitate, and coach every day, though it might look different from the outside. Sometimes I wish I could bring some of the Agile mindset to academia, that experimentation and empiricism that should be at the core of higher education, and perhaps one day I will. But for now, I continue growing as an Agile coach through ongoing professional development and through working with teams across the company, thinking of creative ways to apply the Agile mindset beyond software engineering. So this marks the end of my story presentation. But I would be remiss in my role as a coach if I didn't invite us all to reflect on our own journeys and how the personal agility model might be applied in our own individual situations. So if you would like to join me again on the board, and I can bring folks to me too.
Renee, could I ask you to drop that Miro link back in the chat because we've had lots of people join. I think since
Absolutely.
they last saw that.
Yes. Okay, I think I need to stop the share a second, actually. Everyone. Okay, so I'll bring everyone to me. All right, so here on the board, you see these 6 attributes that I kind of intertwined in my story, used to tell my story. So if you would, I'll give you a couple minutes to, you can drag and drop the check marks on the sliders. This kind of we get a general idea of maybe what are the strongest areas in the group and what are maybe in general sense, the weakest. So yeah, just give you a minute to reflect on that and what you think are your stronger attributes, weaker attributes. I will share my screen again. I'm really curious to see what might be the more challenging ones. Were you able to put yours, Erin?
Yes, I was.
Yes. And if there are too many cursors and it's really distracting, you can hide them too. The option here at the top.
Kind of fun to watch everybody swarm though. It's like,
yeah, it does look kind of like a flock of birds swarming.
yeah.
Is Miro playing that music for you?
Yes.
That's
You
awesome.
might hear it in the browser.
It's lovely.
I'll have to tell Mural that, you guys don't play any music, but Miro does. And a bug ticket on that.
I wish they had it in the voting option, though they don't. Well, I'm assuming we probably have a lot of coaches on the call, so I'm assuming, since this is an Agile meetup, we do have, looks like a very strong, people with some very strong skills here in personal agility, which is great news. I do see, yeah, there's kind of maybe a trend downward here in the relationship management. That's kind of curious, or yeah. So yeah, it might be something to reflect on in the next activities. I won't put anyone on the spot here, but it's just to kind of help us reflect on how that might apply to ourselves and the people we coach. So if you want to, right below, and this is an activity. So we're used to writing user stories for product development. This is something I learned in the Agile People Development certification that I did, but you can think about your own learning in terms of a user story to kind of focus in on something that you want to, a specific goal that you have. It might be helping someone, helping a team, helping the organization, and think about, okay, what is it that in my role as Agile coach, in my role as product owner, whatever the Scrum Master, whatever your role is, what is it that you need to do? What do you need to do, and what is your goal? What is your objective? So using that standard formula that we're used to seeing, I'll give you a minute here to think about maybe kind of trying to tie back here to our attributes. So if it's something that, maybe you need to grow more in relationship management because of something you're trying to achieve in your role. What's something that you might want to learn and work on? So I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. So again, to write on the sticky notes, you just double click on the sticky. And if we need more, you can certainly add more. Yeah, and I see someone here who wrote unemployed. So it could be maybe my role as a job seeker. What is it that you're trying to learn? I've even seen people have their own Kanban boards, kind of like their own learning boards, and using these user stories to focus on one. And there are different ways you could use this technique. I'm kind of curious. I'm reading here. So yeah, so I have teachers wanting to learn how to network. Is there something specific that you want to learn how to do? It could be maybe how to do informational interviews, or find out which meetups or kind of sessions might be available. Great. Well, thank you so much. Hopefully you can bring that's something you can take away with you, and so you can take some more time to reflect on the question as well. So Erin, if there are any questions, I'm happy to.
I know that Jess had one over in the chat, so I'm going to ask her to come off mute and go ahead and just ask that out loud here.
Hey, yes, thank you, Renee. Is it Renee Ann or just Renee?
Renee Ann. I'll answer to both, but yes, it's Renee Ann. Yes. So
thank you so much for this topic and for sharing your story. I am incredibly interested in everything you have to say. So I'd like to know what qualities you think set you apart in the interview that might also like inspire other people with backgrounds outside of software technology to also leverage those kind of communicable skills. And then if there are any specific skills that you had in your previous work that you remember leveraging and would point to your success, what are those as well?
That's a really good question. Yeah, it really depended on the interviewer. I like sometimes it surprised me because at first I thought, oh no, they're not going to like my higher education background. So I felt very self-conscious at first, especially when I was talking with recruiters and people that might not be familiar with the work that professors do. So I really had to find ways to express that, articulate that. but yeah, I mean, then the place where I'm working currently, we're a software company, but we also make software for higher education, for universities, for colleges. And so the thing that surprised me there was that they were actually very interested in that industry experience. So even though I'm not actually building the software, yeah, that I'm familiar with that I'm passionate about that mission. So it really, I think, set me apart in that sense. So at least for my current role, that was something that surprised me, and that able to share some of that experience even with the teams. So
Yeah, I love how in the world these days we're seeing intersectionality between fields that you wouldn't previously, put together. Software development and higher education being two. For myself, I went to college and studied psychology and religion. The intersectionality between that was incredibly interesting to me. But how is it going to make me marketable? So I find your story incredibly interesting that you were able to make such a dramatic left turn, and so it's quite inspiring. Thank you.
thank you. Good luck with with your transition as well.
She's actually transitioned. She's good.
Oh, sorry. Okay, you're good. Congratulations. Thank you.
Anyone else have questions they want to bring forth to Renee? And don't be shy, y'all. So I must confess that one of the reasons I did want, oh, I'm sorry. It looked like Kirsten, you were just raising your hand. So please, yes.
So in your process of finding a new career and changing course, how in your learning process, like how quickly were you actually applying to jobs as well as soaking up a ton of information?
So well, okay, I'll add a little bit to my story. So I found out about the contract non-renewal. I was interested in user experience research. So that's kind of how I started the search. So I was talking about these detours. I didn't want to complicate the story too much, but there are always detours. And so that was one of my detours. And I put a portfolio together, moved to Kansas City because I had been living in Texas, and started the search. So this was January 2020, right before the the world went upside down. And I started interviewing, and a recruiter said, "Well, do you have any Agile experience? Have you ever worked with Agile teams before?" And then I don't even remember what I answered, but I was like, "Oh, I'm an Agile person." I don't know. So I answered something, and I thought. So after the interview, I Googled Agile Kansas City Meetup, and that's how I ended up at the Agile KC Meetup. Learned about Agile coaching. So it was because I started interviewing that I landed in the Agile space. So yeah, I just kind of jumped in, once I had a portfolio and a resume ready. And but yeah, that was a detour, and it's thanks to the people that I met at the meetup. Actually, I see some of the faces.
Yeah, I'm like
here.
kind of wanting, I want Jennifer to raise her hand out right
Yeah,
now.
Jennifer. I met Jennifer.
Yeah.
I met Jennifer that first Agile meetup I ever went to. We were having pizza, and I was like, "What do you do?" And she said, "I'm a Scrum Master." I was like, "What's that?" So yeah, and then those connections led to then meeting actually, and I see the coach I work with. Hello. So yeah, so that's how I met Blake, who's on the call too. So yeah, it was like a vast network of people, and you just never know. Yeah, you never know who you're going to meet. Or like I think some of the interviews that I did, like one of the recruiters said, "Oh, I know so and so. He said he knows you from a meetup." And I was like, "Yeah, I was having pizza with him like 5 months ago." So you never know. You never know who you're going to meet that then ends up being a coworker or a colleague. And yeah, so I'd say, yeah, just kind of, you have to try. It's like that experimental mindset. You have to.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Kirsten. Mike, I see that you have a question over there in the chat as well. So I'm going to invite you off mute also, and to ask Renee Ann live and in person.
So, obviously you're talking to an Agile Meetup group about getting into the Agile space, but what else kind of took your fancy and but kind of fell off along the wayside, and why didn't it stick?
The things that I tried that didn't stick, like
Yeah,
other
like
possible careers.
other
Yeah.
possible careers, and what kind of, did you apply any processes to those? Because I'm looking to get out of agile coaching, so it's like the other end of the spectrum, as it were. And so, what helped you choose something or not choose something?
Sure. Okay. So some of the things I looked at and discarded. So I did look at translation because that was the first thing I looked at, because I thought, well, I excel at linguistics and foreign languages. Clearly, I speak foreign languages, and so I thought, okay, well, maybe I could do translation, and I liked the idea of having the flexibility of working anywhere. I was like thinking of the geography of just how limiting the academic positions were. So, but one of my goals at that time was just I just want to be able to live where I want to. And so I looked at that. I went to a conference. So again, I kind of did the networking piece. And that's when, like, talking with people, I realized, oh no, yeah, this field is really changing, especially the technology of it's now used also with interpreters, that they were doing mostly post editing work. Like, so there's a lot of machine translation happening, and then a human person goes and kind of checks the translation. And so they were struggling in their craft because of the revolution that's going on in the translation space. So I thought that probably won't be a good long-term goal, a very viable option. A lot of them work as freelancers, which is a great career if that works for your lifestyle and your needs. But it didn't match with what I needed. So that was one. I looked at indexing as well. I actually did an indexing course. So again, I thought maybe I could do some of that and scholarly publication.
So a
Yeah,
lot of your earlier things seem to be like holding on to the kind of your scholarly aspects of your career. Do you
right.
think?
The subject, the knowledge of the subject.
Yeah.
And then I learned and at that point, that's when I thought, I don't even know what else I had looked at some options and thought, okay, I really need to branch out here and think out of the box. And that's when I joined Beyond the Professoriate,
Cool.
and learned about, other options. So yeah.
Thank
It
you.
was kind of a broadening of my views and thinking what I could do.
Thanks.
Michael Gartner, I see that you have a question over in the chat as well. So if I could bring you in, and you can ask Renee in too.
Yeah, so I've been shadowing and applying to Scrum Master roles and networking. I feel like it can be hard to know what you don't know. So I'm curious, what do you wish you knew in your job hunt at the time that you know now?
Great question. What I wish I knew now. What I wish I had known. I think at first, when I first was trying to get in, I thought I needed to know how to code, and I thought I needed to know a lot more technical expertise. And I learned that was not the case. So that's something that I learned I didn't need to know. But I am learning a lot just from listening to, sitting in stand-ups, and so learning a lot of those things. But that's not. Yeah, I learned I'm not there to tell people what to do. They're the experts and know how to solve the problem. So just there to ask the right questions, and listen. So, but what I wish I had known, I don't know. I mean, I think I wish I had known that at the very start, that agility can be applied in so many other industries and fields. And I think that's something that really interests me now, is to see, okay, what other industries can we disrupt with this mindset. So I think there's a lot of potential growth there, and I wish I had known that at the start.
I think I have a follow-up question to that. So, the very first meeting that I had shadowed, I remember feeling like that as well. There's a technical knowledge gap, and feeling like I had to understand all the terminology and things that were being said. So how did you go about helping the devs not knowing some of those terms? And
Well, I ask a lot of questions, and sometimes I get, sometimes I find out they're jokes. Like, they're like, "What does this mean?" Or like, "Oh no, that was a joke." You know. But yeah, I think you just have to. I don't know. Everyone's been so patient and very helpful. So yeah, I mean, the questions you ask aren't like, how do you, there's a problem with the code. Like, I can't help with that. Well, great. That makes you even more free to ask. Be curious. Be because you don't know the solution at all. So it lets you have that stance of curiosity.
Michael, can I ask you to hold that question too? Because I think it might be one we want to circle back to even again later, if that's okay. And then lastly, I'm also seeing a question in there from Brian Miller. So I can ask you to come off mute and ask.
Hey, so I have been I took the CSM and have been looking into Agile and everything going on with that. And I'm looking at transitioning from an education role to Scrum. I'm currently a band director in Texas, actually. And it's really interesting because I feel like just looking at the material and trying to understand it, I feel like I see a large correlation with like what people are talking about in Scrum and in Agile almost seems a lot like what I just kind of naturally teach in the band setting. So I'm curious, like, how much of a correlation you've noticed, especially between like education and moving over to Agile.
Hmm. Can you give an example, Brian, of something that you saw?
One of the biggest things is like they talk about I'm pulling a lot of this from the CSM course that I just took, but they were talking about servant leadership, about working together collaboratively as a team to achieve a bigger goal as opposed to just individuals siloing off. A lot of that is like, I just think about my students and how often we're talking about leadership and student leadership and servant leadership, and all of those kind of ideals and practices are just kind of what I kind of feel like I already naturally subscribe to from the band world. So I'm kind of wondering if I'm missing something, or if that's kind of that is the idea that's going. Because we talk in music and band about like it doesn't matter about the individual player or anything. It matters what you can achieve as a group. And so that's just kind of been the philosophy that I'm used to.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you hit the right word there. I think there are a lot of different teaching philosophies. And I know that at least that, in the academic higher ed space, like when you apply for a professor position, they ask to see you have to write out your teaching philosophy, and that can vary widely. Like you could have, and even the type of course that you're teaching, like a band, I imagine a band course would be you have a lot of one-on-one interaction and small groups and ensembles, that kind of thing. In a sense, very similar to modern language class. So one of the things I had to clarify a lot when people are asking, well, what is it that you were doing as a professor? Because they might have had a different experience as a student, even, right? As a college student, going in a big lecture hall, where you have a professor standing in front of the room and just lecturing. Like I'm the person that holds all the knowledge and giving you like that, transmitting this knowledge to you, and you take notes and then take the exam. So it was a very different experience in a modern language classroom. Like we had small groups of students, did a lot of mentoring with like the Italian club and different organizations like that, where we're trying to foster that leadership in the students. There's a lot of creating safety in the class, because yeah, you're going to make mistakes. You're learning a foreign language. You're going to sound like a 2-year-old for a whole semester. And so you have to normalize that and say, yeah, it's okay to make mistakes. That's how you learn. And so a lot of the things I saw is that I embrace as a modern language teacher translate to the Agile mindset, because that's a lot of what it is, making it safe to experiment, safe to fail. Yeah. I don't know. Is that kind of what you were thinking, Brian? Or
Yeah, I was just looking for more thoughts on that and stuff. It's interesting hearing the correlations, I feel like, with education and Agile. I just was kind of, it was one of those things where I was starting to wonder, like, am I crazy? Or because I'm usually like in the entire in the course that I took, like everybody was tech based, I felt like, and I felt like I was the only music person there. and yet the example that was pulled up was for, in this case for Scrum Master at least, was a they were talking about like how the conductor of an orchestra like has to lead through all these like subtle tactics, and I'm like, that's really ironic. So, and
Hmm.
I did have one quick follow up. I was curious, what do you think help you stand out like when you were applying to jobs and stuff? Obviously the PhD is a huge thing, but I'm just curious like what to highlight, because I feel like a lot of these skills are soft skills that are harder to put value on in a definitive way, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned PhD because that's hardly anyone mentioned that in the interviews and things. I think, yeah, it's funny. Usually people would, I don't know, I was surprised by the things sometimes people pick up on. Like they look at the resume and say, "Oh, you studied Italian." Like they didn't care about what kind of, what level. They're like, "You studied Italian," and well, I love Italian cuisine or something. I mean, you never know what it is that is going to create that personal connection, and it might not be the degree. So that was surprising to me. But yeah, in terms of, yeah, you're right. It's a lot of soft skills, and yeah, I had to come up with good examples of, try to translate like what's a stand up. Well, yeah, we had daily meetings with with stakeholders. Kind of have to use the right language that doesn't sound too teachery, too instructor like. So that the hiring manager that might not be so familiar can understand that, yes, indeed, you have been doing this for years. So yeah, so it helped, like when I was writing my resume, it helped to look at examples of what other people had done on LinkedIn, or what kind of terminology they were using. And so instead of student, maybe it's a trainer, right? Or instead of instructor, you're doing training. And yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time and all your answers. I really do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Great questions, y'all. Other questions that anyone wants to bring forward? We've got a couple minutes here before we officially need to shut this down for the night. And by the way, everyone, I've posted Renee Ann's LinkedIn profile over in the chat, and I encourage you to reach out and connect with her personally on LinkedIn as well. And I also put Sid's and my LinkedIn profiles over there as well. So if anyone has any questions, we're all happy to reach out, find one another. And Brent, I'm not musical in any way, shape, or form. Okay. But I've long wanted to experiment almost with a team and teaching them to sing together, just because they would have to listen so closely to one another. And that practice of learning to sing with one another, and then be able to, what's the change like on that team or within that organization afterwards? What softens? What is their empathy like after that? So I encourage you really to experiment and use your examples, because I think they will be far more beneficial than you could possibly imagine.
I think it's really interesting that you bring that up, just because I've been to conferences in the music world where somebody will be speaking, and then it'll be like hundreds of people in a convention hall, and they'll be like, all right, everybody knows Amazing Grace, right? All right, let's stand up. All right, let's go and start it off. And they'll just start conducting it, and it'll start like with everybody just kind of singing it. And then because we're all music people,
Yeah.
they'll be like, all right, now add a harmony, and then everybody will just like break it apart. And it
Wow.
definitely changes so I've done exactly what you're talking about with just like a group of random people, professionals all in a room, that just kind of get called on to do that. And it just, granted, we have the musical training to like, in terms of like, we know harmonies and stuff like that, but the energy and the ambiance in the room definitely changes afterwards. So that's,
Yeah.
it's just really
By the way, I
interesting.
kind of want to throw you under the bus now and be like, I'm going to throw you at some big Agile conference, or you're going to teach everyone to sing, except few are going to know about harmony or anything like that, and few are going to be professional. But I think it would be one heck of an icebreaker at the very beginning.
Yeah,
sure.
That's interesting. I haven't tried making the team sing, but we do use music to, yeah, sometimes just to like calm, create an atmosphere. It creates an atmosphere, and it changes, how people feel.
Yeah.
So yeah, even if we're just doing like a retrospective, put a bit of music or a team canvas activity, and give them the
So
time
Renee, I'm going to
to.
pull you back because I'm seeing Pat Inman. He's got some questions over there in the chat. Pat, do you want to come forth with those?
Sure, let me get the machine working. Yeah, you come out of a background where you did in-depth research and you're working, I think, with tech companies where everything changes very, very rapidly. Is that frustrating, or do you get to use those old skills? Did you find them useful?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. I did do a lot of very in-depth research. I mean, I think I use the research and reading and kind of weighing of evidence, weighing of sources a lot when we create some training materials. So I'm not doing, I haven't written a book yet on agile things, but who knows, right? I might do that someday, and do something a little more in depth in one specific topic. But for now, I'm doing, yes, a lot of writing, a lot of yeah, kind of reading and pulling of sources. So I'm using those skills, but we'll see. Maybe I'll focus on something a little more in depth.
And are you
Sorry.
coaching in other languages as well as English?
No, not currently. Yeah.
Thanks.
By the way, I will tell anyone that if you can coach in other languages outside of English, that is a much needed skill. So don't lose that. If I could upload Spanish into my head right now, I would. It's actually direly needed. Renee, one thing that has struck me though, in listening to you talk about how you migrated from, being in the ivory tower over to agile coaching, is your tenacity and your grit and your willingness to experiment and be like, okay, let's go test this. Let's go find out more about this. And it wasn't just followed on, oh, someone come fix this for me. You went and you found a way through. And it may not work for everybody, but I think you've aptly demonstrated how well it has worked for you. And you said, it's like, do I miss, being over in academia? No, I like where I'm at now. And I really want to commend you for that kind of willingness to experiment and go try something new. You're like, yeah, this door's closing. I need to go create a new track for myself. So really well done. Really well done.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. And Mike, I'm laughing. Daddy, no songing. Okay. So Brian, your first customer will be apparently Mike over here and teaching Mike to sing. And Sid, you're saying team arias with Agile. Oh yeah.
She said she may write a book in the future, and I
Team
thought,
arias with Agile. There you go, Renee. It's right there.
Maybe, right? Yeah, I'm kind of interested in the idea of agility as a culture, like a foreign culture. So I don't know, something or even, I mean, I've seen also teams being described as jazz ensembles. So I don't know if Brian, you came across that metaphor as well, but yeah, and I think there are things that we could explore even more.
Yeah. Right. Well, y'all, because I know we're getting close to the bewitching hour here. So number one, I want to thank Renee Ann for coming and doing this. I think we started talking in the summer because I know I was still up in Montana for this. And, it's been a long time in coming, but she ventured out and said, yeah, I'm going to do this. And so I really appreciate the fact that you did. Secondly, I appreciate that everybody came back so willingly on January 3rd, kind of the first day back in the office. And we're like, oh, a little bit of shell shock after the holidays. So thank you for that. And I also love that we are seeing so many new people at this one. I kind of had a feeling it would be a popular topic, but a lot of people that we've never seen before. So if there's anything that we can do for you, please don't hesitate, ask, reach out. We're more than happy to help. Thirdly, I want to thank again Brittany Durden for all of her years in helping make this meetup possible and successful. I know a few people on here run meetups as well, and so they well know the effort and the time that these take to do. So please thank Brittany if you see her. And lastly, I want you to welcome Sid, because when I put out a call saying, campers, I need help, Sid answered and she said yes, and I'm deeply appreciative for that. So next month, we will have Gabby Aragon here talking about organizational transformations and how to make those successful. And this has gone far beyond Agile. I mean, this is the full onslaught organizational transformation using Leadership Circle, a lot of ORSC tools, a lot of ORSC coaching there as well. So that will be next February, and I think that is February 7th. And I've already got that posted over on Meetup. And so we hope to see you there. And with that, yes, Renee has a feedback link. So if you could go give her some feedback, that would be great. Sid, anything you want to add before we let everyone go?
I couldn't have said it any better than you have. Thank you, Renee, and thank you everybody who attended. I'm looking forward to the coming year with the coaching SIG.
Yeah, thanks. All right, y'all, I'm going to stop recording so you can say bad words.